Good evening. I am very humbled and honored to have the privilege of speaking to you tonight, particularly with such renowned guest speakers we have here tonight. Thank you very much for the invitation. What I'm about to say may be controversial, and many of you may not agree, and may even offend some of you. But this is what I believe to be true and explains why I supported President Trump and why I hosted an event in Washington, D.C. with the help of Teresa Jung and U.S. Congressman Tim Walberg to award President Trump a Peace Prize in 2018. Teresa Jung asked me to speak tonight about our event in Washington, D.C. It is only possible if I go back to 2004, 2005 in my lifetime, when I came to learn something very shocking, very alarming and frightening. That is the existence of what we call today the deep state. The deep state is attempting to overthrow President Trump and possibly succeeded with President Park Geun-hye. I was so alarmed and concerned that by what I learned, I did a crash course in politics. I am no expert, but I studied so much, I think I earned a PhD in politics. Deep state's ultimate goal is globalism. Globalism sounds good, but it means the elimination of individual nations. And their ultimate prize is conquering the United States, the most powerful and free nation on earth. And they were on their way to achieving their goals until President Trump was elected. We can see the progress the globalists have made in Europe with the creation of the European Union. Individual nations in the EU have far less say in how their government is governed, or their country is governed. Decisions are made by unelected bureaucrats appointed to their positions in Brussels. There are plans for an Asian Union and a North American Union. To illustrate how committed the globalists are in consolidating power by consolidating nations. The reason for the Ukrainian civil war is because the Ukrainian government voted not to join the EU. Soon after the US and EU-backed civil war started in Ukraine, Ukraine's president was ousted. And the model for the form of government the globalists want is China, a centralized, authoritarian, a communist system. That is why China has been built up and America brought down over the past 3 to 4 decades. Since the late 70s, much of the manufacturing has been outsourced to Mexico and Asia, and particularly China. This was possible because of the purposely lopsided trade agreements put in place by the Bush, Clinton, and Bush administrations. This was done to weaken the US manufacturing base. A weak manufacturing base means a weak military. This is why President Trump is working so hard to reverse damage done by the past administrations and the globalists. If Hillary Clinton was elected, the United States would not exist as we know it today. I'd like to briefly talk about how I met Congressman Tim Walberg and how he became to support my efforts in Washington, D.C. From 2008 to 2016, I was elected to 2 terms as city councilman as a Democrat. The city I live in is heavily Democratic in Ann Arbor, Michigan. In 2010, I quit the Democratic Party and declared myself an independent, leaning libertarian. At the time, I did not like either the Democratic or the Republican parties. Now I consider myself a Trump Republican. I supported President Trump the day he announced that he would run for president. In 2016, I became involved with the local Republican Party when I helped recount the 2016 presidential election. I was so upset that they were trying to take the election away from President Trump. I volunteered. That is when the Republican Party asked me to be more active in their organization, and I ended up meeting Congressman Tim Walberg at a fundraiser. We got along very well. I asked him to for breakfast. He agreed, and then I invited him to meet with the Korean community leaders in Michigan. And then when President Trump met with Kim Jong-un to initiate the denuclearization and peace process, I convinced Congressman Tim Walberg that we needed to support President Trump. We supported President Trump by awarding him the Peace Prize in 2018. If President Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing, I figured President Trump deserved a real Peace Prize. Al Gore even got a Nobel Prize for his untrue, inconvenient truth. Nobel Prize are sometimes given solely to raise the stature of people so they can carry out an agenda, not because they deserve it. On April 26, 2018, we awarded President Trump the Peace Prize for his efforts to denuclearize and bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. We also gave him a model of the renowned Korean battleship, Kabuksan. I thought the Kabuksan illustrated what President Reagan and President Trump believed, and that is peace through strength. We were hoping but did not expect President Trump to attend, but I hope he sees the award someday. In my opinion, our Peace Prize is far more meaningful and appropriate than the Nobel Peace Prize, although I do not have the $1 million to give him, and he really doesn't need it anyways. President Moon found out about the event and for the 2018 event and sent his advisor and a gift for Congressman Tim Walberg. I am not a big fan of President Moon, but appreciated the recognition and for the event and Congressman Walberg. We were also invited to the Korean embassy to meet the ambassador. I was only planning on having the event once in 2018, but we were told that President Moon wanted us to do it every year. So we had the second event this year on May 9th. The purpose of the event obviously was to support President Trump and his efforts to denuclearize and bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. However, since a peace and united Koreas must be based on capitalism and democracy, all invited guests were conservative Koreans from Korea and the United States. Conservatives that are very concerned Korea is moving toward socialism. Mr. Hwang Kyo-an even called Theresa Moon 회장님 because he was interested in attending our event and possibly meeting President Trump. It did not happen, but we heard President Trump sent an advisor to meet with Mr. Hwang Kyo-an. The day Congressman Walberg agreed to help host the event to award President Trump the Peace Prize, I informed him that the real battle will be over who and what controls the United Koreas. Will it be communism or democracy? And I continue to remind him every time I see him. He's very aware of the situation, and as they say, when the crap hits a fan, I hope he'll be on our side, push for democracy in United Koreas. That is why we need to support politicians like Congressman Walberg. He is our connection to Washington, D.C. that could help influence policies toward Korea. The way things are going currently in Korea, we need all the help we can get. For this year's event, many people promised donations to help cover our expenses. Consequently, myself and Theresa Chung Hui-Nim spent close to $25,000 for the event. Unfortunately, hardly any of the promised donations materialized. This was the second time last year promised funds were never given. At this point, I have lost faith in promises made by Korean people, unfortunately. Chung Hui-Nim and I will not be able to host the event this year unless the funds are available in advance. Thus, very likely, it will not happen. But next year's event is very critical because you have the 2020 presidential election and congressional elections, and the following year you have the presidential election in Korea. There's a good possibility that big movements in U.S., North Korea negotiations could happen before then. Furthermore, because the elections the following year is in Korea, there's a good chance prominent conservative politicians and leaders will attend our event. Maybe even President Trump will attend. Third time could be the charm. In order to host this year's event, I estimate we need $40,000 to $50,000 to do it properly. Most of the money will go to cover expenses to host the event, and some will go to donations to U.S. politicians to entice them to come to our event. We hope to attract key U.S. politicians that have a say in what happens in Korea. It is very possible our event could make an impact on what happens in the United States, but particularly what happens in Korea. We cannot afford to wait much longer as Korea spirals toward socialism. What we can do here is help President Trump win in 2020. The United States must remain strong and great for Korea to be a strong democracy. Making America great will make Korea great. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 무슨 내용인지 충분히